Yamato for Straw Hat is a train that I've been on since the very beginning, and with what we saw in the most recent One Piece chapters, I think my belief's about to be confirmed. So in this video, we're going to be discussing Yamato for Straw Hat, why I always believed in it, what else I think has to happen to her character for her to fully become a Straw Hat, and also her potential future as a Straw Hat in the story. As always, make sure you do subscribe and join our King Pirates crew to keep up with these videos, and also thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video, but more on that later. Alright, but let's start things off with the question of why Yamato, and the good thing about this is because I've been on the Yamato for Straw Hat train for so long, I can kind of walk you through my thought process. See, as soon as Yamato's character was first introduced as Kaido's son, and we saw that she was a good person and she wanted to ally with Luffy, I was already on the train at that point. My first Yamato for Straw Hat video had like a fan art of her as a man. So I like the idea since the beginning because that's just a crazy cool idea right off the bat. Like, this is Kaido's son, the strongest creature in the world. His son might end up joining the Straw Hats. That's crazy to think about. Like, I feel like because of how much we've gotten to know Yamato as a person, we've kind of forgotten about that element of it. Like, everybody freaked out when Jinbei, a former Shichibukai, joined the Straw Hats. Imagine people's reaction when they find out Kaido's son slash daughter joined the crew. So just the thought of that was super exciting for me right off the bat. And as someone whose favorite thing in One Piece is the Straw Hat crew and getting new crew members and seeing them develop, that feeling of a new unique character getting added to the Straw Hats is the best part of it. And I understand that's only a feeling, but that's also kind of a criteria for a Straw Hat. In order to be a Straw Hat, you have to be an incredibly unique character, especially since the Straw Hats enter the Grand Line. Pretty much every new Straw Hat has been some sort of like cyborg or like a guy that's actually dead, but he's still alive. Every Straw Hat has to be unique. They have to add something new and they have to make the audience excited. And even the Straw Hats that don't feel as unique, like an Usopp, they end up getting a ton of character development that makes him such a great character. And for Yamato, the more we saw of her character and learn more about her story, I just felt stronger and stronger about her becoming a Straw Hat. First off, before we even get to her story, just across the board, she's just a really epic character. Absolutely love her design. I know a lot of people say she looks like Nami, and I can totally see that, but I feel like she still stands out in her own way. Of course, she does have horns, and her race should be an Oni, so that's a new race for the Straw Hats. She fits the diversity quota perfectly. Power-wise, just in terms of the abilities she has in her bag, she's easily one of the most unique characters. Not only has she showcased the ability to use advanced Conqueror's Haki, but she also has a mythical Zoan. Like, those are two incredibly rare things to have in the story. In fact, the only two other people that have both of those things are Luffy and Kaido. So before we even talk about how strong she actually is and how she fits in the crew, just what she has in her bag makes her incredibly unique. So I think even when you look at Yamato on the surface level, she's a really interesting character. But of course, at the end of the day, what makes the Straw Hats great is that they have multiple layers to their character and story, and Yamato absolutely has that in my opinion. Of course, we learned a lot more about her story during her flashback. We found out about her struggles as a kid, how she bonded with the samurai of Wano, how she found Odin's journal and why she was inspired. On top of that, there was the connection she had with Ace, adding more to her story, and low-key, that Ace connection was actually pretty massive because it gave her a direct connection to Luffy. So as a result, ever since she was introduced, the person she spent a lot of time with is the captain of the Straw Hats, Luffy. So she's been building a lot of chemistry with Luffy, and at the end of the day, Luffy's the guy that has to approve her joining, so that's very important. But yeah, overall, I think when you look at Yamato's story, she's definitely gone through a lot of ups and downs, and you can really see why she's become the type of person she is right now. Now, of course, an interesting story alone is not enough to become a Straw Hat. There's a lot more criteria that a lot of people like to point out. But at the same time, while I absolutely believe that there is a criteria for a Straw Hat to a certain extent, I do think people kind of get caught up in the specifics too much. Like, for example, one thing we've talked about is being unique, because a lot of the newer Straw Hats are like a completely different race or something no one has seen in the world before. And while Yamato does check this box, I wouldn't just like completely shut down any humans joining the Straw Hats because they're not a different race. Because it's not like every single Straw Hat has to be a unique race. All of the East Blue Straw Hats are human. Robin is human as well. So as far as the criteria goes, I do think people get caught up too much in the specifics and the similarities, especially because Oda has never even come out himself and established any criteria. So even with things like a sad backstory, even though all of the Straw Hats have one, they're on like completely different levels. And once again, Yamato does end up checking this box as well, but I think sad backstory, we shouldn't just look at it as this character needs to have a sad backstory or they can't join the crew. Instead, I think the element of a sad backstory is the character unique and well developed. And honestly, at the end of the day, I really believe the only criteria for becoming a Straw Hat is It's just that you have to be a unique, interesting character with a lot of layers. I really don't think you have to check these like 150 boxes of like you need a dream, you need a sad backstory, you have to be a different race, you have to be strong, your devil fruit has to like fit into the numbers of 1 through 10. Obviously, some of those things like having a dream and having a role definitely matters, but I do think when we get too caught up in the specifics of our criteria, we kind of just stop looking at the story and what's actually being presented to us. Like for example, Carrot, and this is gonna trigger a lot of people, so I apologize in advance. And I know some of you gonna get mad regardless of what I say, but I'm really not trying to like make fun of Carrot or anything. I'm just using her as an example. But as far as Carrot as a Straw Hat candidate, and I've done this myself, a lot of people will look at the criteria first and just start checking off boxes. And they'll be like, okay, Carrot's a unique race, she's a mink, she's pretty strong as well, she could be a lookout, she has a sad backstory technically with Pedro dying, and when it's all said and done, she ends up checking a lot of the boxes of the criteria. But that's where the criteria becomes the problem, because you kind of start to look at that first before the first box that has to be checked, which is what has she done in the story. And in the story, while Carrot did get a decent amount of shine in Whole Cake Island, where she was a pretty prominent side character, in the past like 150 chapters, she has absolutely done nothing. So storytelling wise, it would just not make sense for her to join after Wano. To just take a character you're thrown in the background for 150 chapters and make him a Straw Hat, that would just feel unearned. Even like Tama and Momonosuke, who I also don't think are joining for different reasons, they've gotten a ton more shine and development in recent chapters, and you could definitely make a stronger argument for them joining. Now, of course, when it comes to Yamato, you can make the argument she was introduced really late into Wano, but Wano has been a stupidly long arc. It's been like 70 plus chapters since Yamato was introduced. Onigashima by itself is pretty much an arc, and if you look at it that way, Yamato was pretty much introduced in a new arc. And since being introduced, she's gotten a ton of focus, showcasing her powers, her personality, building chemistry with Luffy, telling us more about her story and history. So when it comes to the criteria of becoming a Straw Hat, there are definitely some you have to check, like having a dream and being unique. But the first box you have to check before any of that is whether or not you've gotten enough development. And I believe Yamato has checked that box and other boxes as well, which is why I feel really strongly about her joining. That being said though, I'm not celebrating too early. There are other things Yamato has to figure out. But before we get to that point, I want to let you guys know about Skillshare. Because when Yamato does become a Straw Hat, she's going to be a new pirate, and she's going to need to learn a lot of new skills, which you can also do with Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of online classes and members across 150 countries, and it's one of the best places to get inspired, learn new skills, whether for a hobby, your business, or a side hustle. With a premium membership, you get access to every single class available, and personally, I've actually taken a ton of Skillshare courses. You see, when I first started growing this YouTube channel, Skillshare was the place where I found a lot of useful classes to really grow my skills. For example, one of the biggest creators on the platform, Marquez Brownlee, actually has a course on Skillshare. His course, YouTube Success, Script, Shoot, and Edit with MKBHD, is a great lesson on how to successfully create a great video from beginning to end. And to just get an inside look on someone so successful on the platform was incredibly helpful to me. Besides his class, there's a lot more great classes from creators like Ali Abdaal and Yes Theory. So if you want to improve your skills and get started on Skillshare, the first 1,000 people to sign up using my link will get a 1-month free trial on Skillshare. So go click the link in the description and start your Skillshare journey today. And now back to the video. So getting back to Yamato, while I do think there's a good chance that she's joining, there are some things she has to figure out. And the number one thing I really need her to figure out is that she is not Odin. And I guess you can call this a theory, but it's just kind of the way I view Yamato's story, which is that she has to kind of figure out her own identity. Like reading more about Yamato's story, I think it's very clear why she wants to be Odin. She's been trapped her whole life, and when she read Odin's stories about great adventures and how he was able to freely explore the seas, that became her idol. And of course, during his execution, he had this great final moment, and that's what made her really want to become Odin. In a way, I kind of view it as a coping mechanism of like pretending she is someone else in order to just make her dreams of freedoms come true. But now that Wano is about to be over and Kaido has been defeated, she is free. She does not have to be Odin. As a matter of fact, if she keeps thinking that way, it's honestly kind of weird and disrespectful. Like that is literally Momonosuke's dad that he saw die like a month ago. So personally, I really hope that this doesn't become like a running gag for her. I think that would be kind of weird. On top of that, as I've said in previous videos, I do think there's more to the Kaido and Yamato story, because the one thing that's still confusing to me is why Kaido called Yamato his son and why all of the Beast Pirates did that as well. Because clearly it's not because he respects her pronouns. He literally abused her and starved her and hated the fact that she tried to become Odin. So him calling Yamato his son is definitely for a selfish personal reason in my opinion, and I definitely think we need more information to really understand that dynamic. I thought that we would get it in a Kaido flashback, but honestly at this point I'm not so sure anymore. But either either way, as far as Yamato goes, I really think that this is the last hurdle that she has to clear before she becomes a Straw Hat. One thing a lot of people have pointed out is that Luffy doesn't call Yamato by her name, he calls her like Yama Bro. And with every single Straw Hat, he actually calls by their actual names while he gives nicknames to everybody else. So a lot of people have made the argument that because he gave the nickname for Yamato, she's not gonna join. But I actually think conveniently it could kind of fit into this identity development for her, where essentially Luffy's not gonna let her join or call her by her name until she accepts that she is Yamato, and that's okay. So if there's one thing left in my opinion that's standing in the way of Yamato becoming a Straw Hat, that's it. I think it's probably gonna happen by this next chapter when Wano's about to end before we enter this 4-week break. But I will say I'm also not completely certain that it will happen, and if it doesn't happen, she actually might end up not joining. That being said though, personally I do believe she's gonna join, so let's talk about her potential role as a Straw Hat. And there's a lot of fun things to discuss here in terms of power structure, her role, and her future in the story. I think the first thing we should talk about is her role on the ship, because that's actually a criteria. Once again though, I don't think it's that important. We really haven't gotten many hints of a specific role for her, but I don't think that's that big of a deal. At this point, if I had to guess what her role on the ship would be, I think there's really only one obvious answer, and that's Lawkeeper. In a way, that was pretty much Oden's role in the Roger Pirates, so this could be Yamato's role as well. Of course, Oden's journal is one of the reasons she wanted to become a pirate and why she inspired to be him, so I really think Lawkeeper makes the most sense, and I don't really see any possibilities for other roles. The only argument I've seen against this is that we are entering the final saga, and the Straw Hats are gonna go to Laugh Tale soon, so there's not gonna be that much to log. But I think that argument doesn't make any sense, because just because the story is over, I don't think the Straw Hats adventure is gonna be. Like, the Straw Hats have been moving forward at an insane rate, and they're gonna be the fastest and youngest to get to Laugh Tale, but I see absolutely no reason why they would just stop after Laugh Tale. The world is completely massive, there's still 3 more seas for them to explore. Even within the Grand Line, there's like 7 other paths they could have taken. I'm sure there's still hundreds of islands to explore. Nami's dream is to draw a world map, so she's definitely not stopping. And let's not forget, the Straw Hat crew is mad young. Like, Luffy's only 19 years old. For him to retire at 19 just because he got to Laugh Tale would be ridiculous. And can you imagine how much that would suck for Jinbei? Like, Jinbei finally joined the Straw Hats in Wano, and then like 2 islands later, they just disband. So I see absolutely no reason for the Straw Hats to stop exploring after Laugh Tale. So Yamato as a Lawkeeper absolutely has a lot more to write about. Besides that though, let's talk about Yamato's chemistry with the other characters. And honestly, this is one of the things I'm most excited about, because Yamato's kind of in this unique spot where age-wise, she's 28, so she kind of fits into that middle group with Frankie and Robin. But at the same time, she's also so innocent and kind of childish, so I can totally see her fitting in with like the Usopp, Chopper, Luffy group. On top of that, just based off her strengths, she kind of fits into that monster trio as well. So in terms of chemistry and dynamic, I can really see her fitting within a lot of these groups. Speaking of power though, let's talk about how strong she is and how she fits within the structure. In my opinion on this has been pretty consistent. The monster trio will never change. And honestly, when it comes to this topic, it's really not even a power scaling debate, because if you wanted to make the argument that Yamato is stronger than Sanji now, or maybe even Zoro, I'm not gonna argue against you. Yamato has absolutely proven to be an absolute monster. She's definitely incredibly strong. But the thing is with the monster trio is that it has never changed. After 151 chapters, the monster trio is still the monster trio. Like, we've gone through this so many times. When Robin first joined, she was the second in command of Baroque Works, and a lot of people thought, oh, okay, here's another monster, but it was still monster trio at the end of the day. When Frankie joined, he was a guy that fought against Luffy, but the monster trio was still the monster trio at the end of the day. And of course, most recently when Jinbei joined, a lot of people were like, oh, maybe Jinbei's stronger than Sanji, or like Luffy's the captain now and they have 3 commanders. But guess what happened at the end of the day? Luffy fought the strongest, Zoro fought the second strongest, and Sanji fought the third strongest. If it hasn't changed in over 1,050 chapters, why should we expect it to change now? So even if you want to make the argument that Yamato is stronger than some of the monster trio right now, I have no problems against that. At the end of the day, I fully expect Zoro and Sanji to get power-ups, and the monster trio will not be disrupted. But yeah, as far as Yamato goes, I think she fits perfectly within the Straw Hats, and there's a lot of different things to be excited about. And speaking of Straw Hats, I have one in my hand. If you guess it wrong, you have to like, subscribe, and watch the next video. The answer is one of the monster trio that is never going away, and that is Sanji.